Tonight we begin with an issue that concerns our very livelihood, concerns you and I. It is the state of the nation's economy. It is clearly not what it ought to be, clearly not what the government promised Nigerians during campaigns. Look at inflation. It's nearing 30%. The naira to dollar rate, just over 1,000 naira. That's if you're lucky to get it at this point. And the indices are there. The price of petrol, where it is right now, is it where it ought to be? What exactly is the government doing behind the scenes? And not to talk of the cost of living. Is there a way out of the woods? I mean, what are we dealing with here to begin with? We need to get to the heart of the matter, and that is what we'll seek to do tonight. We have joining us on the program this evening, Mr. Bismarck Rewane, who is an economist and chief executive officer of financial derivatives, joins us virtually on the program this evening. Thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Rewane.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
You know, it's been said that Nigeria has never had it this bad economically, and there's that narrative out there. We'll come to the specifics, but I wonder, do you agree with those who have said that it's never been this bad?
Yes, in nominal terms, yes. I think Nigeria is facing a cost of living crisis. It's facing a credibility crisis. It's also facing a worsening level of corporate mortality. And generally speaking, the welfare of the people is now threatened. But what is more disturbing is that you talk around and ask people, we asked about 10, 20 people, all of them have really lost hope about what the future holds for them. So I think that is the situation. And the slides that you are going to display in a few minutes will show that Nigerians are embattled. We chose the word embattled because things are really difficult. And it seems to be, it's going, as you can see there, let's break it down. Inflation rate was 5 years ago was 11%, and today it's at 25.8%. The price of petrol, the exchange rate was 363 naira to a dollar, the parallel market 5 years ago. Today, it's, as you said, it's settled at about 998, but it's about 1,003. The price of a liter of diesel at that time was about 200 naira. It's now 1,015 naira. The price of petrol was 145 naira 5 years ago. As you can see, it has crossed the threshold and is at 617. The transport fare from Oworoshoki to Obalende was 200 naira 5 years ago. It is now 500 naira. So you can see all the arrows there point to a negative direction. So the question is, how? Like I said, the problems will not start today, and what's the way out?
Just before we get into that, Mr. Rewane, we understand that messaging is important, especially if you're trying to attract investment into the country. There's a certain messaging you put out there about the nation, its economy, the reality, and even hope for the future. I mean, no one wants to invest in a climate where the people don't see a hope for the future. But facing reality is equally more important, and that's what we seek to do on the program tonight. And you're going to talk about how we got here. What exactly is going on with our economy, Mr. Rewane?
Well, the economy, let's face it, the economy, the challenges, I know how we got there. We must talk about that to know when and how we're going to get out of it. This has been almost the last 15 years. We've had the economy deteriorate. Principally, we have imbalances, external imbalances. Our exports were reducing relative to our imports. The terms of trade were against us. We have had oil theft, we have debt problems, we have poverty, and we have low productivity, but it has been deteriorating, but at a slower pace. So when this administration came in and took some major decisions, those major decisions were predicated on the assumption that once you make those decisions will be followed almost immediately with an impact. But what we fail to understand, and what most policymakers do not understand, is that there's a need for credibility. Once confidence is eroded, if you don't come clean with the exact picture, then the people begin to have doubts. And once there are doubts, confidence erodes, you will have distortions from the equilibrium. What do I mean? We announced that petrol subsidy had been removed. In fact, it has been reduced. Well, the level of disequilibrium actually reduced. It's very good. We also announced that we're unifying the exchange rate. It's not as easy as that. The exchange rate unified for some time, converged for some time, and then diverged. We talked about the electricity tariff, the having cost reflective tariffs. That has not actually happened. We're having a slowdown in that. But in all fairness, the intentions are good, but they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So the policy changes based on facts that are there must be followed by institutional reform. But one other thing, we announced, or we show on our website to the world, that our external reserves on a moving average basis is about $34 billion, as high as $37 billion. So when JP Morgan came out and when the audited statements came out to say that our unencumbered reserves are actually about $3.7 billion, it made people to gasp and say, okay, what exactly is the true position? Can these guys support their currency at this level? And if the backlog, I think the Minister of Finance gracefully announced that we have $6.3 billion or so of backlog. Well, you can take it out of your reserves, but are the reserves there to do that? So this raised a lot of questions and eyebrows, and you can see that international investors, domestic investors are concerned. So the first thing to do is to come clean. What is the true position? I believe that the currency will appreciate. I believe that we will go back towards equilibrium in almost all the indices. But we have to start, the first step is to come clean and come straight to the people. Say, this is the true position. And it's much better than we had many years ago, but it's not where people expect it to be. I think that's the first and most important thing. Coming clean, telling the people the truth about what the true position is, and reducing the amount of anxiety people have.
I wonder, really, what may be going on in the minds of those in government, because time and again people have talked about honesty, transparency, and accountability in communicating these issues. So what may be responsible for this, really? Is it that government is trying to still put up an optimistic front so they don't reduce the hope which you talked about that people have in the economy? Is it some sort of economic tactic? What will the government achieve if it is able to come clean, honest to Nigerians that this is what is happening? What kind of gains will the economy now begin to reap immediately?
The truth is that if you don't come clean and people find out and have doubts, what is going to happen is that because of that lack of confidence and because of that anxiety, people are less likely, one, to bring money in, but more importantly is that people will take their money out, right? So capital flight is in two directions: people taking money out and people not bringing their money in. And you must understand that apart from our export earnings, we have invisible flows. That is our diaspora, our artists, our footballers, musicians, Nollywood. Those monies come in to the economy, but come in through a surreptitious route. Therefore, you will say officially they should bring it in at $7.99, while unofficially they can get 1,000 naira. So they go the other way. And so let's first of all take away all these restrictions. They are meaningless, because everything you say is banned on the shelves in the supermarket. So let's not deceive ourselves. Let's come clean and tell the people where it is. Once they know that, the pricing of all these assets will be driven by the market. And I can assure you that this exchange rate you're seeing at about 1,000, once people know it's clean and they know that there's a system to it, begins to appreciate. And they appreciate very quickly. We've seen that happen before. So I'm confident that the indices will improve when, one, we come clean. Two, we begin to reform those institutions that benefit from these distortions, right? Then we follow it up with going back to our creditors to discuss with them about how to get new money and reschedule some of the debts that we have. Talk to the multilateral agencies. We put systems in place which show that we are accountable and transparent. It will happen. We have done most of these things, but what is missing from what I can see is a transparency to come clean and tell the people that this is where we are. And I think we are going to get there. I think there'll be some changes in the people, the policymakers in recent times, which give me hope that some things are going to change for the better.
You know, when you talk about borrowing, that's usually a touchy subject. But some say, what other option do we have? But a lot of people will recall the president, the government speaking about subsidy removal, saying that when this is done, it will reduce our borrowing. We don't have to borrow to fund subsidy. We'll have more money left to spend on infrastructure. So you're saying that the only option for us at this point is to go up borrowing, for the lack of a better term?
No. Usually we have three components of debt. We have domestic debt. We have international debt from the multilateral agencies, which are concessionary money. And then we have international debt from the London Club and, from the London Club, essentially, from the Club of Bankers. So the London Club debt is expensive, but you need it. The Paris Club debt, which are the export credit agencies, is not that expensive, but you have to have a policy program with the IMF and the World Bank to make them sure that you are going to, one, use the money judiciously, and two, reduce the leakages. That comes with the territory. And then the domestic debt is priced at a rate which is infinitely lower than the rate of inflation. So there's no incentive for people to save, increase their investments domestically. So all of these things put together are what you're looking at. Do not look at debt in the context of only international debt of the highest, most expensive. There's the most expensive London Club debt, and there is the Paris Club debt, which is between donor countries and export agencies. Then there's the World Bank and IMF support programs, which are for 40 years and above at maybe 1 or 2%. So all of those things put together. But if you have a policy support instrument program, which means that you have been endorsed, then the London Club of Bankers will come to you. The export donors, Austria, Germany, France, Italy, Japan, China, will come and support programs through your, concessioning programs, export credit agency loans to support programs to buy things from their country. When you put all of this together with the foreign direct investment, which is provided by the foreigners and the companies like Heineken, Guinness, Shell, and others. So when you put all of that together, at the same time, you will find that the economy will begin to grow. The indices of inflation and debt is not everything there. The final solution in all of this is to achieve growth, productivity, and growth. Once the economy is growing at about 5, 6, 7, 8%, you'll find that all other things will fall in place. There's no country in the world that doesn't have debt. As a matter of fact, many countries, the debt to GDP ratio is about 120, 130% is much lower. But you have debt, but you have nothing to show for it in terms of assets and nothing to show for it in terms of productivity. So that is the problem. So we have to understand it and stop blaming people about it. We should actually talk about it in real sense and be honest with ourselves. If you're not honest with your own population, then how can you be honest with your creditors?
You know, the component which we have a challenge with when it comes to debt is the cost of servicing the debt. The revenues we have, imagine taking a huge chunk, sometimes even almost everything, to service the debt. And I think that's a major concern. That's why some are concerned about the debts. But you talked about government coming clean. Just before we talk about the forex and what is going on there, who should come clean in government? Is it the president? Is it now the new CBN governor, the minister of finance? On whose table is this coming clean?
Well, the economic team is made up of both monetary and fiscal authorities, to be clear. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy is the old hand in this. He knows what to do. And I think he will get down to it. He has been saying the right things. The new governor, the new team in the central bank, I know the governor personally and professionally. He has the capacity, he has the stature, and more than anything else, he comes from a reputable academic address or zip code, as we call it. So he definitely he has the capacity to think right. Intuitively, he will do the right things. But more than anything else, I do not think he will do dumb things. But the first thing is that you have to stop doing dumb things before you start doing smart things and modernize those things. So since somebody I know personally, and he comes from the Citibank staple, which that's one of the best banks in the world. So you don't work for that kind of institution, and you don't rise to the point, even at the board level, to become the chairman without having it in your DNA to do only the right things. So, but you see, a tree doesn't make a forest.
Right.
The institution we are talking about has been, to a large extent, decimated, both morally and professionally. So it has to be rebuilt, and you will need the support, and the team will need the support of everybody. But again, we are running a country, and so the country's leadership, we are taking a few snippets here. We're taking the Minister of Finance, we're taking this, but it's much wider than that. And so the whole idea of being honest and coming clean with the people is a cultural thing, right? So we need to come to terms with that. You cannot have one part of the system being honest and straightforward, and other parts of it being crooked. So we need to accept that there's work to be done properly, and led. So if we have more of the people that we can rely upon in the key places, I think it becomes easier to achieve the desired goals. I think that is very, very important.
What is going on with the naira? At 1 naira, or at least $1, I should say, to about 1,000 naira, the question will be, is the government not handling this well? Is it beyond the government? Is this floated, semi-floated? Are we really clear on what is playing out with the Nigerian naira today?
Firstly, I think the true value of a currency depends on certain fundamentals. And if your exports are more than your imports, if your inflows are more than your outflows, then your currency is bound to appreciate. But more than anything else, if your rate of inflation relative to rates of interest in your country are in equilibrium, you find that currency strengthens. But I don't want us to go away with the view that the naira is an orphan in the economic market, because almost all the currencies, the Ghanaian cedi, the South African rand, all currencies have been embattled in the last 2-3 years. Most currencies, because the dollar has been strengthened relative to other currencies, because dollar interest rates have increased. The U.S. has done a lot of work to bring its economy in order, so to speak. Now, the question that we have to ask ourselves, fundamentally, oil prices at a high of $93, $94 a barrel. Our production is down to, sadly enough, that we're not taking advantage. The price of gas, which is our second export, is increasing. The price of cocoa is at about $3,000 a ton, cashew nuts, and all the other non-oil exports. But there's something fundamentally wrong. The fundamental problem is that, one, you have mispriced your currency relative to its availability, the supply. You have also put in place a lot of restrictions. Restrictions have with their own, the consequence of restrictions is it gives the impression that there's not enough to achieve the desired objective. And then the time between when you put policies in place and when you expect to get results, the lags are also long. So to call a spade, the reality is that the true value of a currency, the rule of the thumb is that in a frontier market like Nigeria, it's about 20 to 25% overvalued normally, what we call the political risk premium. So if, for example, the currency is 25,000 naira today, you knock off 25% of it, and so it comes to about 750. So fair value could be anywhere between 750 and 800 at this time, if not lower. If you use the purchasing power parity analysis, you come up with something close to 700 naira at this point in time, right? And the other thing is that the amount of the invisible flows that we have, let us call remittances around about 24 to $25 billion, are not coming in through the pure and the market. It's coming in through dubious sources and adding more risk to it. So the first thing to do is to ask yourself, when will the currency begin to appreciate? And let's go back historically. In 1986, so when we started the SAP thing, it was 1 naira to $1 official, and the currency was traded about 2.2 naira 83 kobo. Eventually, the parallel market was 4 naira. So 1 naira to 4 naira is 300%, right? More than, so if 1 naira was $1 and it was selling at 4 naira, the currency was overvalued by 300%. If you look at it today, the official rate is 800. The parallel market is 1,000. So there's a 20% deviation from what the official is. So the level of overvaluation is based on those data, on that data, is 20% compared to 300% overvaluation in 1987. So when people say that, oh, the currency has gone from 1 to 1,000, it is not. When it was 1, the parallel market was 4. When it was 22, the parallel market was maybe 40 or 50 something naira. When it was 88, it went that way. And it has gone that way all the way. So what do we need to do? 1, come clean. What is the true level of reserves? 2, make sure that your oil is not stolen, because the stolen oil is sold and brought back to the. When you do that, and thirdly, you ensure that you remove most of the restrictions so that money can flow in, right? I think when you do that, you will find the currency begin to trade closer to its fair value. But I don't want us to go away with the view that the big problem here is caused by some people and all that. Yes, there are inefficiencies, there's corruption within the system, but that itself is not enough to do the kind of damage that we've seen. The damage is a cumulative effect over years of different missed opportunities, vested interests, and lack of understanding, 1, and belief, 2, in the whole philosophy of economic reform. I think it can be done. A floating naira, like any other currency, the world can survive. I think it will appreciate again, but the time between now and then, I don't think we are going to be seeing the appreciation until early parts of 2024. But there are always good tidings, and there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
Again, that phrase, light at the end of the tunnel, and for a lot of people, they've heard that time and again, wondering, how long will this be? You've given a timeline, and it is important to state that within that timeline, government should not just fold its hands and say, well, we have up until 2024, so let's see how it goes. What must government do then as a matter of urgency to ensure that while it is perhaps trying to get its acts right with the appropriate policies and all, that the average man out there is not too impacted? Because the question on their minds will be, just how much more can we take? We've been pushed to the wall. Do you want to push us into the wall? So what must government be doing right now as a matter of urgency?
Firstly, I think you got to believe in the reform economics. If you don't believe in it, then you can't do anything about it. Secondly, you've got to stop the captures, state capture. You can't have oligarchs and having barriers to entry. This economy must be freed from the oligarch interest, right? And oligarch interest means that you state capture, shifting state resources to private pockets, right? And leading to inefficiencies, right? So 1, come clean. 2, understand it and believe it. And 3, more than anything else, you must allow the market to determine pricing. After you do this, then you now you must understand something firstly. 1, by reduction in subsidy, and I use the word knowingly, by reducing subsidy in petroleum products, reducing subsidy in the exchange rate, those monies shift to the government. So how is the government spending the money that has come their way? I saw something just now on your program about people taking pure water sachets and saying that that's palliatives. In all fairness, the word palliative means temporary relief. It doesn't address the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is that there must be growth and there must increase in productivity. The total palliatives put together in terms of materiality, the total Nigerian budget, even genuine and ingenuine spending, if I may use that word, comes to less than 5 or 10% of the GDP of this country. We need to spend big. We need to spend on projects that increase productivity, and we have to block those leakages. Encourage people to invest, and when I say not lip service, make sure that people who are investing are not harassed. Right. Make sure if they want their money, they can get it out. Ensure that levels of rates of interest in the economy are closer enough to the rate of inflation so that there is some equilibrium. If you look at our map, our trajectory, you'll find that the times that we had interest rate close to the rate of inflation, we had inflation came reduced, we had higher reserves, and we had a greater level of productivity. In fact, there was a time when our GDP went as high as 7 or 8%. I think that we can replicate that very easily, and I think I see signs of that coming. But we need to come clean. We need to be straightforward and honest, and we have to stop deceiving ourselves and deceiving people.
I know there's. I know at this rate, a lot of people will be asking, who is to blame? Who is really dragging our economy down? Who is responsible for this? Is it the politician out there? Is it the government? You talked about oligarchs, state capture, but a lot of work is clearly on the table of the Central Bank of Nigeria with a new governor now. And there's this ongoing issue with the foreign exchange debt. Figures, the ones owed DMBs, figures put it at, $10 billion. And that also has its impact on the economy. You've talked about, debt is not entirely a bad thing, especially looking at where you are getting it from. But with this current impasse, with the CBN, the DMBs, the CBN has not held its MPC meeting as of now. It's been postponed indefinitely. What must the CBN do then, particularly the governor, which you say that you think is in touch with the issues and is able to make those decisions? So what kind of situation is he faced with, and how can he get out of it for the good of Nigeria?
Firstly, let me start with Eleanor Roosevelt's quotation that says that big minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about events, and small minds talk about people. With all due respect, if we start blaming who is responsible, we'll never stop. Let's put that behind us. Let's focus on how to get out of here. And that's what I want to focus on. That the administration has some good people, and I told you already that the governor of the central bank has a highly reputable academic address, and he comes from a highly reputable academic address. Let's get that. He also has a pedigree of working in one of the best institutions, banks in the world. In other words, both as a manager and leader, but also as a chairman of the board. So there's no doubt about that. But I said earlier on that this guy or these guys, the few that we can say we can rely on, a tree cannot make a forest. Their voices, they'll be drowned out if, one, the people do not ask for good governance. Two, that the leadership in all ramifications, in all respects, all angles and branches of government must come clean and be straightforward with the truth. When you do that, you will find that confidence starts from home. It's from home we dress to go outside. We don't dress from outside to come into our houses. So going around talking, having conversations with investors is good, but let the house cleaning start from home. You dress up from your house to go out to a party. You don't dress up at the party to come back into the house. I think that's important.
Right. So the government is right. You can add that point.
Yes. You want to make a point?
Yes, I wanted to put in this question now to just, bring all of the issues on the table so at least government and the people are aware where we're at. Government is faced with an ultimatum. Labour is saying that, well, you need to end or at least give some succor to the excruciating pain being felt by Nigerians out there. And you talked about some of these issues, the cost of living, inflation, and the rest. So the government is faced with an ultimatum. It has given 2 billion naira to state governments, hoping to top it up with extra 3 billion naira to make 5 billion, which the Minister of Finance said is some sort of grant and loan, a mix of all of that. What options are in front of the government? Because the real price of petrol, as we've seen, is way more than it is. So clearly, subsidy is still there. You've called it reduced. So what options are before the government? Should it then say, well, let's remove subsidies so we can have more money to maybe give to, or is it palliatives, even though that term is now a bit, controversial?
No.
What exactly must government do to maybe appease labor and stop this impending nationwide shutdown?
Appease labor is what you see. The minimum wage at the time and I was chairman of that wage committee at that time in 2019. The reality is that at that time it was the equivalent of about $72 to $75 per month, right? To give people $70, $75 to put them where they were in 2019, you would need to increase their minimum wage to 70,000 naira. If you increase wages without increasing productivity, you will end up where you started. That'll be what we call money illusion. So yes, there's a need for some wage adjustment. But you cannot do it in isolation. You got to, first of all, allow interest rates to increase so that people can save, increase their savings, and reduce their consumption. You need to show clarity and candor for where you are so that international money can come in and domestic dollars will not go out. You've got to clear your backlog. You can't owe the airlines, not expect them not to price in dollars. So quite frankly, we have to come clean to ourselves first. Let's be honest with ourselves as to what the true position is. And then we can chart a path to ensure that we can get to where we want to be, right? I don't think we should start blaming people. And like I said again, the new governor of the central bank has a reputable zip code, right? Both academically and professionally. He has the capacity to do that. I've said before that he will not do anything dumb. And therefore, we need to encourage people like that. And we need more of people with this kind of pedigree to actually begin to champion things and be left alone to do what they have to do. I think that's important. Then we liberate ourselves from the shackles of oligarchs, state capture. How do you do this? Pricing, and turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So you've got to know that if you're going to do this, you've got to ensure that interest will be heard, but you have to have the courage to go do it. But again, there's a lot of work to be done. And like I said, the crisis of false expectation, which is what has got us to where we are, saying that you will do things and with one silver bullet will be solved. It's not going to solve, there's no silver bullet going to solve any problem today. There's hard work to be done. There's need to come clean and have some candor, and you tell and put the right types of guys in the places to lead this thing. You cannot plant rice and expect to grow yams. You cannot. Whatever you sow, you reap. And that is where I'm coming from. That it's time, and I keep on insisting upon candor, competence, and credibility will get you there. Thank you.
Well, we've seen that the NBS revised the way it computes unemployment rate, and it's come way down from the over 30% that it used to be. Economists still have issues with that. They say it doesn't reflect what is on ground. And you've talked about productivity. It is quite important. That may give some people the thinking that, okay, maybe we're where we ought to be. But if there are low-hanging fruits, sectors that you think that in the meantime we need to give some more leverage to maybe invest a little bit more in so that they can give us fruits in this short period of time? What would you be advising government to do in that line as we wind down?
Well, first and foremost, I do not agree with that methodology that says that a man who is gainfully employed for 1 hour in a week is employed. Normally, there's a kind of there's a view held out there that the number of hours you work should be equal to the number of hours you sleep. So when we had the old methodology, we said we had 33%, you work 8 hours a day in a 40-hour week, and then you normally will sleep for 8 hours a day as well. If you use that same crude back of the envelope analogy and say, look, you must work for 1 hour a week and sleep for 1 hour a week, you are not going to be able to achieve anything. So that methodology is, to some extent, according to the World Bank, it's fair and nice, but I don't agree that it captures anything, because with 1 hour wage in a week, you will get 140 naira. I don't think there's anything you can buy. A loaf of bread today, the small loaf is 750 naira. The big loaf is 1,200 naira. So if with the wage you get in a week, you cannot buy a loaf of bread, I wonder how you can survive. So
Okay.
The question of living wage, the question of poverty. So the employed poor is different from the unemployed. The unemployment, underemployment, and there's the employed poor. So call it whatever you like. There is work to be done. And that's part of the reason why I say come clean and tell the people the truth.
Right. The interesting thing is with you, Mr. Rewane, we can go on and on talking economy, but we have to anchor at this point. And we'd like to thank you so much for giving insight and, of course, giving the government some ideas, at least, and the people, of course, on the way out. Mr. Bismarck Rewane, Chief Executive, Financial Derivatives, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.